And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and live. Good luck.
Merhaba arkadaşlar, hepiniz IEFT Talks webinarlarına hoş geldiniz. Bugün dünyanın en iyi 100 üniversitesinden biri olan Lund University'de Eğitim ve İsveç'te Yaşamı Rebecca'dan dinliyor olacağız. Lütfen sorularınızı questions kısmından sormayı unutmayın. Yes, Rebecca, the stage is yours now.
Thank you very much. Lovely to see everybody. My name is Rebecca. And I work at Lund University in the Department of External Relations. Today we will be giving a presentation that will go through lots of different aspects that you might be interested in if you're thinking about studying at Lund University. My colleague Daniel will be in the chat answering questions that you might ask. I would encourage you to perhaps wait a little to see whether we cover your questions before you add a question, because hopefully we will today. We're going to go through things like the programs we have available, the study experience at Lund University, little bit about costs and housing and all sorts of areas. So I hope that we will be able to answer any question you might have today, but we will also have time at the end to answer any questions that we can't get to in the presentation. I would also say that any questions about eligibility, as in your individual eligibility, cannot be answered today, but we will be giving you information on how to contact us later if you have a more individual question or something that you want to ask us about your particular case. Okay, and I think with that, I will start our presentation. So I'm just going to get everything ready here and then I will share my screen. Great. So here we go. Okay, I hope that everybody can now see my screen. I'm just going to double check that it's still showing when I am here. I think, Zainab, you can confirm?
Yes, we can see it, Rebecca.
Wonderful, that's great. Okay, so I'm going to start today with a little bit of information about the university itself. For anybody who is not familiar, it's one of the oldest universities in Northern Europe. We have more than 43,000 students and 8,100 staff. We offer over 130 master's programs, 9 bachelor's programs, and many more courses taught in English. And later we will talk about the English requirements. We're ranked as a World Top 100 university, and we're the 40th most international university in the world. We're the top choice for international students applying to Sweden. And we are a public, comprehensive, and research-intensive university, which I'll touch on a little bit more in a second. So in terms of the actual city of Lund, I don't know how many of you have been to Sweden or are familiar with Sweden, but we're in the south of Sweden, quite close to the border across the bridge to Denmark. The city was founded in the year 990, so we are one of the oldest cities in Sweden. And we're close, as I mentioned, to Denmark. Copenhagen is only around 40 minutes away, and Malmö is around 10 minutes away. And Malmö is the third largest city in Sweden. The population of Lund is around 125,000 people, and it's a real university town. You can see some photos during this presentation where you're going to see lots of the buildings that we have around the city, and I think it's got that lovely feel of a really traditional university city. It's also home to many world-class research and development units and companies with strong links to Lund University. So Ericsson, for example, Sony Mobile, Tetra Pak, and many more. Here's one of those lovely buildings, the library, the main university library. We, as I mentioned, are Sweden's most international university. We have a total of 23% of our students as international, non-Swedish students. And in our master's programs, that's even higher. It's 60% of students in the master's programs. So if you attend a master's program at Lund, you're definitely sure to be surrounded by many people from many different countries. And we pride ourselves on recruiting students from all over the world. So we have a really diverse classroom. Sweden's most popular university for international master's programs, as we mentioned, and we have more than 640 partner universities in more than 70 countries worldwide. For anyone who might be interested in exchanges, they mostly take place at the bachelor's level, but it is also possible within some master's programs. So if you find a program that you're interested in and exchange is something that you would like to investigate, you're very welcome to see whether that's something that can be offered by your particular program. So I'm going to talk in a minute about the different master's and bachelor's programs that we offer at Lund University. So before I do that, I just wanted to explain a little about what we're talking about when we talk about our undergraduate degrees or our postgraduate degrees, just for anybody who may not be familiar. So in terms of the undergraduate degrees, when we talk about bachelor's, we're talking about 3-year programs, which are normally worth 180 ECTs, which is a kind of credit. For postgraduate degrees, we're talking about either 1-year masters or 2-year masters. And most of our master's degrees are 2-year programs, so that's something to be aware of as well. In this presentation, we will touch on PhD if we have a moment, but the main focus will be on the bachelor's and the master's programs. But for anybody who is interested, our PhD degrees are usually 4 years. So they're a significant length. Okay, so as we mentioned, we have one of Scandinavia's widest range of programs taught in English. And I'm going to share with you a screen where you can kind of see what we mean when we say that we are a comprehensive university. And that means that we offer a range of different programs. We are not specialized in only one particular area. We have all sorts of different options for you. So you can see on the screen now a variety of different options in different subject areas. I want to mention actually while we're on that topic that we are currently running subject area weeks digitally on our website. You can find details about that. So if you are interested in one of these subject areas and you want to get to know some of the lecturers from the program or perhaps talk to some students, you're really welcome to also join us for one of our subject area weeks as well. This week we were looking at law, but we've got many other areas that we're looking at each week. So you can have a look at our website for more information about that. So we have 9 faculties and more than 30 world-leading research fields. And now I'm going to get on to a bit more of the detail about what you need to do in terms of being eligible for these programs. So this is a lot of information, a lot of detail, but as I think you already are aware, this presentation is being recorded. So you're very welcome to come back to this later to have a look and see the detail about what you need to do. And I've tried to make sure that I'm highlighting here what is relevant for those with an educational background from Turkey specifically. So yes, and these links can be shared later as well when we follow up. So if you're interested in a master's program with us, then you would need to have a bachelor's degree before you would be considered eligible for any of our master's programs. And please excuse me if I say this wrong, but that means a lisans diplomacy or a mühendislik diplomacy. I'm sorry if I say that incorrectly, of at least 4 years. So a 2-year degree or a vocational degree, unfortunately, do not fulfill the requirements for master's level study. In addition to having that bachelor's degree, you also would need to show proof of your English language proficiency. Later, I will have a whole section on what kind of things count to prove your English language proficiency. So we'll come back to that requirement later. But the standard would be an IELTS test where all sections, IELTS test 6.5 with no sections below 6, or a TOEFL test with a score of 90. The GRE or GMAT tests are not required, but some business programs do allow you to submit them. So if you have a good balanced GMAT, for example, then some business programs will look at those as well if you would like them to. So they're not necessary, but they can be helpful. Most programs also have specific requirements, and what we mean by that is that you should have a certain academic background in order to apply for that program. So for example, if you want to study civil engineering, you should have some kind of civil engineering related bachelor's degree. Most of the programs require that you have previous related study. Some of them are more open, one or two of them. So again, it would depend on what kind of program you're applying for. And every program has a program page on our website. The link is on the screen, where they list what they expect you to have before you can apply to that program. So any questions that you might have regarding whether you're eligible, the best place to start is to look at the program page and to have a look at what the entry requirements and the selection criteria are for that program. For master's level studies, we offer conditional acceptance, meaning that if you are in the last year of your bachelor's degree currently, you can apply to start your master's in summer, or August 2022 it would be when you would start. And you have to provide your transcript up to now, and then a special form which is available on the university admissions website. And again, we'll share those links so that you know so that you know where to go for those kinds of resources like that form. But it is possible to get an offer of study when you're still in your final year of your bachelor's program for a master's level course. Okay. So in terms of the required documents that you have to submit for a master's program, you have to submit your official transcripts for all your completed years of study. You have to submit your diploma or your degree certificate, or, as I mentioned, proof of enrollment, including your expected date of graduation, which is normally a particular certificate that you can submit to show that. And it's an important note here that the above documents often need to be provided both in the original language and in an officially certified English translation as well. You also need a copy of your ID, proof of your language proficiency, and program-specific documents. So again, certain programs, in addition to looking at your bachelor's marks and your grades from your previous studies, will also ask for something like a statement of purpose, which is similar to a personal statement where you outline your motivation for study and what you hope to gain from the study. And some others may ask for references, for example, a reference letter, or other documents like a writing sample. So depending what kind of program you're looking to apply to, you need to check the program page to make sure exactly what documents they expect. So that's the detail about master's programs. So now we'll go on to bachelor's programs. As we mentioned near the start of the presentation, we have less bachelor's programs available taught in English. So if you are looking to study a master's, there are many options. With bachelor's, there are a bit less options on our list. For students with an educational background in terms of high school in Turkey, then you need to have successfully completed your upper secondary school. And this list on the screen, you can see what we mean by that. Those are the kinds of qualifications which are accepted when we're looking at your eligibility for a bachelor's program. Again, proof of your English language proficiency. Programs may have specific requirements for certain key subjects. So for example, if you're going to study a science program, then you should have some kind of evidence that you have studied mathematics or physics up to a certain level. Can be quite difficult to advise on the eligibility for bachelor's programs because they are always listed in terms of the Swedish high school qualifications. But if this applies to you and you are struggling to understand something on the web page, then of course, please do contact us and we'll see what we can do to help you understand. There is also some resources available on the university admissions website as well to help with that. Admission for bachelor's programs is always based on upper secondary school GPA, so your grades from your secondary school qualifications. But there are some programs like fine art and music which also conduct interviews, so that's just something to be that's worth knowing. Now, for bachelor's applications, only applicants that have completed their upper secondary school by the document deadline can be accepted to bachelor's studies. So there is no conditional acceptance for bachelor's programs. That's really important to know because it can affect when you apply, and we'll talk about dates of application in a few minutes. Okay, so in terms of the required documents for bachelor's, again, you need your complete transcript of records from upper secondary school and a certificate of graduation from upper secondary school. And again, you often need to make sure that they are in both English and the original language. You need your copy of your passport, proof of English language, and as we mentioned, the music and fine arts programs do have additional requirements. So for example, you may need to provide a portfolio of your artwork if you want to study a fine arts bachelor's. So you can check the program pages to see what's expected there. Okay, so now we're going to talk about English requirements briefly. There's a big list on here that you can obviously look through later in more detail, but there are various ways to prove your English proficiency. I just really would like to highlight for this particular audience of students from Turkey that unfortunately upper secondary studies completed in Turkey do not automatically meet the English requirement. So you can't use, for example, an English qualification that you studied at high school to meet the English requirement. And preparatory studies completed in Turkey, for example, doing a preparatory year, also no longer meet that requirement, even if you have been exempted from taking an English preparatory year by taking an English exam at your home university. So if you studied your bachelor's degree in English, and this is clearly stated on your degree certificate, or if your institution only teaches in English, and we can actually verify that on the World Higher Education database, then you can use your degree certificate as evidence of your English proficiency. So that's good to know. Or if you have a higher level qualification above bachelor's level where the same applies, where it's clearly stated that you studied in English, for example, or the institution was only teaching in English, and we can verify that online. You may also be able to prove that you have English proficiency if you've studied in English elsewhere. For example, in English-speaking countries like the UK or the US. There are various options in that regard. So I would advise you to have a look at the link at the bottom of this page to check whether that applies to you. Or, as we mentioned, you would need an internationally recognized English test, and the two most common are IELTS or TOEFL. The test should be less than 2 years old, and it must appear on our list of accepted tests. So a common question is whether Duolingo counts, and unfortunately it does not. So you have to check that the test that you've taken is listed as an option. Otherwise, this is the time to make plans to take another test before the document deadline. Okay, so we will briefly just mention PhD because I know that there are often questions about this. It's important to know that in Sweden, there is no centralized application system for PhDs, meaning they don't run like the master's and bachelor's programs. Instead, they are more like a job, and they're advertised when the faculty has funding for that job. It comes with a salary. You are employed by the university. So as you can imagine, these are very highly in demand positions. And you normally have to have already completed a bachelor's and a master's in order to even apply, as well as having the relevant experience that they're looking for, which can be very specialized. As we mentioned near the start of this presentation, it takes 4 years at least to complete a PhD, sometimes longer. And there are sometimes options for self-funded students to do a PhD, but you have to contact the relevant department to find out more about that option. So yeah, there is a link here for more information about PhD studies, and you are welcome to look at that. But as I mentioned before, today we're going to focus on the Masters and Bachelor's programs. Okay, so what is it like to study in Sweden? This is an area that we often get asked about, and it's very interesting to me because I actually studied at Lund University. So I have this experience myself of coming to a new country and studying in a different way to what I was used to in the UK, which is where I'm originally from. So one of the things that I noticed the most is that in Sweden, studies are taken one course at a time, with an examination or an essay at the end of each course. Courses can be 2 weeks long, or they can be very long, 20 weeks. That's quite rare. That's normally a thesis course, for example, like the last project that you might do. But normally it will be somewhere in between, like maybe 5 weeks or 10 weeks. And then each time you study that particular subject, then you complete that subject and you complete some kind of assessment, and then you move on. And personally, I love that system. I think it's very effective, and it allows you to have a good work-life balance because you are able to focus on one thing at a time. The way that you are taught is very varied depending on which program we're looking at. Some courses, like engineering, might have 30 lecture hours a week, but some, like social science programs, might have only 10 hours a week. And then you would still be expected to work at least 40 hours a week, but you would be doing a lot more self-led learning. So you might be reading, you might be doing group work, that's very common in Sweden, or some kind of project where you are out doing field work during the rest of the week. So it's not to say that you only would spend 10 hours studying, but you would possibly only spend 10 hours in a lecture theatre listening to somebody speaking. The most common form is lectures, as we mentioned, in groups of between 25 to 30 students. Of course, some science programs will have lab work as a main element. And group work, as I mentioned, is really common. So that's something to know as well. Something I had to adjust to a little, but that I really valued and enjoyed after a short period of time. Students are expected to be active in the classroom and to take a high degree of responsibility. Okay. Now, moving on to a couple more things to do with living. We have obviously got tuition fees for our master's and bachelor's programs, but they will be different depending on which program you're looking at. So you're talking about between around 10,000 euros and 21,000 euros per year, depending on which program you're looking at. The tuition fee is paid in installments. It's once per semester, which means twice a year. And each year you would need to show that you also have at least 8,500 euros available to support yourself and your living costs as well. So that's something that you need to be aware of when you apply, is that you need to make sure you have a plan for showing that funding, and then of course for affording the tuition fees as well and living. A monthly budget of around 900 euros is considered normal to cover accommodation, food, books, etc. Of course, it depends a little on your lifestyle and what you need day to day. The key is normally to do with your housing and cooking your own meals. Sweden is sometimes people assume that Sweden is very expensive. It's true that restaurants, taxis, certain things can be very expensive, but it is possible to do it on a bit of a budget as well. Okay, accommodation, that is a common question about housing. A great thing that we can offer is that we have a housing guarantee for non-EU students. So what that means is that you can apply for LU accommodation, and we will make sure that you are given an offer of accommodation, normally single occupancy student dorm rooms. So the most common would be to be offered a room on a corridor, meaning that you have your own bedroom and either a private or a shared bathroom and a shared kitchen with other students. There are various dormitories all over the city of Lund, and Lund is quite a small city, so you're never going to be that far away from campus. There is also another campus at Malmö and at Helsingborg as well for one or two of our programs. So you'll see when you have a look at our programs online that most programs are situated in Lund. Rent is normally between 3,200 and 4,800 kroner a month, and that depends on the property. You can rent on your own or with friends, but we really recommend accepting the accommodation through the housing guarantee because it can be very challenging to find your own housing. So when you first come to Lund, it's great to know that you definitely will have an offer of housing there. Tuition fee liable students, meaning non-EU citizens, are covered by special insurance provided by the government at no extra cost. So that allows you to, for example, if you need emergency healthcare, you would be able to get that. Okay, and now we will talk briefly about scholarships. That's another another area which I know is very important to many students. The main option that we have is the Lund University Global Scholarship, and I'm going to talk more about that in just a second. And that is a tuition fee discount scholarship. So we already mentioned the tuition fees and how much they cost. The LUG scholarship, if you were to receive it, could offer you a discount of between 25% and 90% off your tuition fee. But it's important to know that the way that that's allocated depends a little on the faculty and what funds they have or the department. And it's also a very competitive scholarship. So I think the latest statistics last year was that around 3% of applicants received that scholarship. So that's something to be aware of. I've also put a little bit of information here about the Jean-Monet scholarship program. This is a fund specifically for Turkish nationals attached to a university or an organization in Turkey. But it's just important to note that that fund only applies to programs which are between 3 and 12 months. So you're only looking at our 1-year master's programs as potentially being eligible for that fund. So that's something to be aware of. Of course, we also would encourage you to look into other options. We have a page where we talk about external scholarships, but I often encourage students to really look into what the options are for funding from their home country, because these are so different depending on each country. So that's something to look into as well. As we mentioned, the Lund University Global Scholarship can offer either 25%, 50%, 75% or 100%. I said 90%, but actually I think it is it's often stated as 90%, but perhaps it's 100. I'm sorry if I got that wrong. This is based on your academic merit and your motivation. So you would provide evidence of your previous studies and a letter explaining why you are a good candidate for this scholarship. And I always think it's a good idea to show what you plan to do with the knowledge that you're going to gain. That's my tip, because I think that's something that people often look for. Approximately 15 million kroner is awarded every year, and eligible students are invited to apply in early February. So that means after the application period for studies has closed. Scholarships can only, this particular scholarship is only awarded to students who have chosen us as their first choice. Occasionally, we award scholarships to second-year students as well, but it's not something that can be counted on. So I hope that gives you a little bit of information there about the Lund University Global Scholarship. Here's a typical lecture theatre in Lund. Okay, so now down to the final information that you need. When can you apply? How do you apply? The applications open on the 18th of October and they close on the 17th of January. You can apply online by following the link on the program page, or you can go directly to www.universityadmissions.se and search for the program there. So that's 2 ways to find the program. But either way, you need to apply through universityadmissions.se. It's important to note that you have to rank your choices. With master's programs, you can apply for up to 4 programs. With bachelors, it's up to 8. But you can only get 1 offer. So it's very important that you select as your top program the program which you think you are most interested in and definitely eligible for. There is an application fee of €90, and you have to apply by January the 17th, but then you have to submit all of your supporting documents before February the 1st. So that means your IELTS test, for example, your upper secondary school studies if you're applying for a bachelor's, any other documents that are requested by the program must be submitted by February the 1st, and that deadline is not flexible. So if you haven't managed to upload it by then, it will not be included or considered, and you may be judged as unqualified. So for that reason, we normally suggest that you try to get everything ready and apply a bit earlier in case you're missing something. It's best to apply perhaps in November or December once you're ready with all your documents. You would then get your acceptance notification if you are lucky enough to be accepted in early April. And as I already said, don't forget the deadlines. Make sure that you've checked that you've submitted everything and that you're definitely eligible before the deadline. Okay, so last things that are good to know before applying. You will only be considered if you truly fulfill the entry requirements. So you need to make sure that you are definitely eligible. You must provide the documents in the way that university admissions asks you to. You may not be able to be considered if you lack a document or if it hasn't been submitted in the correct way. For example, if you need to provide a translation. Only submit supporting documents that are requested, because any other documents will not be considered and may just get in the way. If there are any issues, you need to correct them before the deadline. So it's a good idea to make sure that you complete that application earlier, like we said, and to check your application account on universityadmissions.se during the application process in case the admissions staff have contacted you. So here's another little reminder of those important dates. We can send this later so that you can have those. So final reasons to choose Lund University. We are consistently ranked as one of the world's top 100 universities. We're one of the strongest research universities in Scandinavia. So we have cutting edge education and facilities, and most of our teachers are active researchers. We're a member of prestigious international networks like LERU and Universitas 21. It's an international environment. 90% of Swedish people speak English, and it is not required to speak Swedish in order to study on campus. Strong research environments mean that there are opportunities to pursue PhD level studies, and it's a real university town with access to the rest of Europe. I hope that you enjoyed that presentation. I will stop sharing my screen now and come back to the chat. Thank you so much. So I can see that we've got some questions in the right-hand side here. So I'm just going to have a little look here and see if there's anything that we perhaps did not cover during the presentation. Let's see. And I can see that we've got lots of questions here that Daniel has managed to answer already. So that's really great. Daniel, perhaps I can also out loud reply to some of these questions or just share the answers. I can see that we're currently answering a question about whether there is a medical school and what are the application requirements. And I can say, just for anybody who missed that question in the chat, that unfortunately our actual medical program, which allows you to be a doctor or a nurse or something similar to that, is only available in Swedish. However, we do have other programs in the area of medicine and health, such as our public health program, our biomedicine program, and things like that, which are available in English. So it depends on your goals in terms of what you're hoping to do. In order to study to actually be a doctor in Sweden, you do need to speak Swedish. And we do have Swedish programs that you can study in order to learn Swedish up to a very high level. However, even completing that program would not guarantee you entry to such a popular program as the medical program. So there's a few things to consider if that's your goal. It can be a long journey, a long and challenging journey. But yeah, so that's something to bear in mind. I can see that we have a question about living expenses, which hopefully we already covered a little bit, but also Daniel has shared a very helpful link in the questions where you can actually find out a bit more of a breakdown of what those kinds of costs might be. So please do feel free to check that out if that's something you're interested in. Also, for any other questions that you might have, there is a link in the questions section as well that Daniel has shared, where you can submit a question via a form to us. And also after this presentation, everybody who's attending, we will make sure to send a follow-up email to you. So when you receive that, please do feel free to get back in touch with us again with any other questions that you might have. I'm just scrolling down to have a little look to see if there's any other questions that perhaps we should answer live. Yeah, I can see a question, are we able to work during our education? And yes, the answer is students are allowed to work while you're studying. However, it's important to note that there is quite a lot of competition for jobs because there's many students at Lund University. And as I mentioned earlier, you do have to provide evidence that you have enough funds to live already before you start in order to get a residence permit. So it's important not to count on working for your income, because that would mean that you had not given the correct documents to the migration agency. And it's important to know that with your workload and with the competition for jobs, it may be quite difficult to find a job. So that's just something to bear in mind, but there is nothing to stop you from working if you can find a job. So let's have a look. Yeah, we can see, I can see some really helpful answers here from Daniel. So I would encourage everybody who has a question to have a look at the questions here. For example, there's a question about the acceptance rate for Lund University. And as Daniel has answered, it varies a lot depending on what program you're looking at. But I can say that all of our programs are competitive. So you will always be competing for a place. You'll never be guaranteed a place. But for more detail, you would need to look up the particular program you're interested in and then contact that program for a bit more detail. Or let us know and we can help you to give you more information about that. Yeah, so we've got, a reminder of the application fee. That was 900 krona, which is around 90 euros. And we've got a couple of questions here about scholarships and tuition fees, which we have actually covered in the presentation. The tuition fees vary depending on the program. And the main scholarship that we offer gives a tuition fee discount. It's the Lund University Global Scholarship. So if you have a question about those things, please do feel free to re-watch the presentation and go to those links that we shared before for a bit more detail and information. Great. So I think, this is a good question. I might just be able to fit in a couple more questions before we end. Somebody asked, is it possible to start our education online and then continue on to campus? And unfortunately, well, it depends on your view about this, but fortunately, things are going back to normal on campus now, which means that almost all of our programs are taught on campus in person, which I think most of us are really happy about, actually, because it's a return to some kind of normality. But that being said, if you're looking for a distance learning program, we only have one or two that are actually available. One of them is the Geographical Information Systems program. So if that's your area, you're very welcome to look into that. But for the rest of our programs, you should expect that you will be on campus. Unless, of course, something changes in the next few months. We can't predict exactly what will happen next year at this time. But if everything continues as it is now, then you would be expected to be on campus next year. Okay, I'm just going to check if there's any other things that I can help with here. Let's see. So I can see a couple of new questions here. But I think we've kind of answered that before. Yeah, well, I think we've got some good ones, good questions that have been asked here. I hope that everybody feels like we've answered a lot of these already. There's a question here about working in Sweden after you graduate. That's a good question. And as Daniel has answered in the chat, after graduation, you are able to stay for a short period, 6 months, while looking for a job or similar. And then you can extend and get a work permit if you find a job. If you want more information about different career paths after particular master's programs, again, I can highly suggest having a look at the program pages and potentially contacting the program coordinators who will have a bit more knowledge of where students end up after they finish those programs. So that can be a good option. Yeah, in terms of how to find those programs, I can see that we've had a question. Can you give me the link for example, the computer engineering master's degree page? I think I can just actually share in here the link to our programs and courses by subject area. That way everybody is able to find their particular program that they might be interested in. So I'll just put subject area. Pages are here, and then you can please feel free to browse and find your program, so that everybody is able to actually find the program pages there. But of course, you know, if you Google at Lund University, you'll find our website, and you should be able to go from there to find our program pages. Someone's asked about summer school for high school students. Unfortunately, we don't offer a summer school program. We have an external partner called On Campus who offers 1 or 2 preparation programs, but normally you have to have already been qualified for a particular program before you're eligible for that, at least for the summer preparation program that they offer. But you can have a look at our webpage and have a look at On Campus to see what kinds of options are available there. Okay, so I think that we are now about to finish our time, actually. So I'm just gonna ask whether maybe we could see if there's any other last questions that we can answer, but I think we probably have to wrap up. However, as I mentioned, after this presentation, we will be following up. So we will make sure to follow up with everyone who's attended today, and then you will have an email that you can contact us on if you have any other questions, as well as the web form, which Daniel's already shared in the questions here. I think that's probably everything from me. Zeynep, would you like to wrap everything up, or?
Yes, thank you very much for your great presentation, Rebecca.
No problem. Thank you for having us.
We believe it was a really informative webinar for the attendees, and it was a great session. And thank you also, Daniel, for the answers of all of the questions. And also, I would like to thank the participants in Turkish as well. Katıldığınız için teşekkür ederiz arkadaşlar. Lund University ile ilgili diğer sorularınız için linkleri incelemeniz faydalı olacaktır. Umarım sizin için de faydalı bir webinar olmuştur. Thank you very much again, Rebecca. It was a pleasure to have you in IEFT Talks.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.